What's good, everyone, and welcome back to Kaya's Commentary. And if you're new here, welcome to Kaya's Commentary. This is a podcast that offers commentary on pop culture topics, real world issues, and anything in between. This is episode 11 of my 13-part series, Picture This, where I look at Black, Indigenous, people of color representation in the media of past and how that affects their presence in the science fiction fantasy genres of today. So, in the last episode, we briefly covered Netflix's The Sandman with characters like Daniel Dream and death, and pretty much a vibe-ish of the show overall, which were pretty positive from what I found. Today, we are talking about Disney's The Acolyte. So this follows Osha and May, their twin sisters, and in chronological order, I believe this is what starts it all, right? This is 100 years before Luke and the Empire and all of that. Um, as children, May and Osha grow up in a coven and they will ascend eventually, meaning they will combine their powers for the power of two as one. However, Osha, I started to say May, Osha doesn't want to bind with May. She wants to have her own. May does want to bind with Osha. You know, it's her sister. She loves her. Um, she sees nothing wrong with it. Osha wants to be her own person, though. So the Jedi are snooping around on this planet trying to find life and a vergence on this planet, and they do find the Coven. The Coven is standoffish. They don't want the Jedi interfering in their way of life. And to be fair, the Council, this is just a small ragtag group of Jedi. The Council that they report to did tell them to like just leave the Coven alone, just to point that out. But they don't. And Soul, one of the Jedi, he wants to take both the girls, but May is very resistant, per her parents' instructions, her mom's instructions, but also she just didn't want to go. But Osha does want to be a Jedi. So when a fire burns down her coven and kills all of her family, and she presumes that that is May as well, she is taken by Soul to join the Jedi. However, she is unable to control her anger at May, who she believes started the fire, and so she's never really able to ascend to be a Jedi. So we flash forward, and the Jedi who were stationed on that planet of Brendok begin mysteriously dying off. We find out that May is alive and that she's coming for revenge with the help of her master, the Stranger. She finds out that Osha is alive because she thought Osha was dead, and so her allegiance changed to her sister. You know what? Right on. You don't owe that man nothing. Osha, however, being angry because she believes that May is the reason for their coven being lost and their mom dying, has her own resentment and hatred towards her. May tries to get her to overcome that and tell her the truth, but Osha is unwilling to hear this. So, how it ends is Osha does indeed find out the truth, finally, that Soul killed her mom, and he blamed it on May, and May is kind of to blame, she started the fire, but he blamed it on May. He never told her. This leads Osha to killing a Jedi without a weapon, pleasing Chimera, who then takes her as his apprentice. Chimera, by the way, is a Sith, and he takes her as his apprentice. She sacrifices herself, saying she will go with him if he lets her sister out of the deal. They wipe her sister's memory so that when the Jedi come looking for her, she can't answer any questions. It's a little bit more in depth, but basic overview. Something to note about the Star Wars series. Now, I have watched the movie series anyway. I have watched the original and the prequels and then the sequels. I just remember that Luke, I am your father being much more of a than it actually was. Like I remember that being a Luke, I am your father. And in actuality, it's more of a Luke, I'm your daddy. I didn't kill your father, I'm your father. Um, and I say this to say that, the originals and George Lucas, his versions are considered, they're held in really high regard. Not to say that they shouldn't be, but he sold it to Disney, and since then, you never hear the end about how Disney has ruined and is ruining the Star Wars franchise from all these um fanboys. Ironically enough, George Lucas says these movies are for children, but they don't want to admit that. There's a small group of fans that do not like comic sidekicks. They want the films to be tough like the Terminator, and they get very upset and opinionated about anything that has anything to do with being childlike. Now, he says that in relation to Jar Jar Binks, which is not very helpful. I've mentioned how you find out people are criticizing something that you've done for being stereotypical. You don't have to double down on it just because it wasn't your intent. But so he says that in relation to Jar Jar Binks, but he says they're for children. And while, these shows have grown into something that can be for adults, adults can enjoy children content or, they can pull in more than one group of people. Um, for this notion of Disney has ruined Disney, children, for the most part, a children thought of corporation has ruined this childlike product for you. You know, I said all of that to say this is one of the many shows that gets that Disney is ruining the Star Wars franchise. So let's get into some reviews, and I also want to try to make some comparisons. Let's get into it. So, Shoddy AD 7511 says, May, she's extremely unlikable. Osha, she's extremely indifferent. I don't get it, man. The show has been great the last three episodes, but I wish the show focused more on Soul and Chimera as the main two characters. May is extremely unlikable from literally the beginning. Even before she got corrupted by Chimera, she tortures helpless animals, literally tries to force her sister to live a life she doesn't want, and then tells her sister she wants to murder her. And starts a fire, and this is before meeting Chimera. After meeting Chimera, she murders two Jedi, basically murders a droid, and leaves her sister for dead on a planet with man-eating bugs on it. She shows absolutely zero remorse for murdering people. She has no loyalty and switches sides multiple times. She is just as incredibly unlikable character. Now, Osha, we don't even know her at all. Everything is so surface level. The only thing we learn is that she is mad the Jedi kicked her out, allegedly. I feel so indifferent about Osha. I have zero emotion attachment to her. And her character gets even worse. She snoops on Chimera, watches him in the nude, literally looks at his penis, and doesn't even try to look away. We are talking about a guy who just murdered six people, including a childhood friend and another friend. A guy who literally corrupted her sister to become a serial killer, and Ocean is letting herself be seduced by him. If the show cut out all the useless scenes about the twins and focused more on Soul and Chimera, it would be much better. Chimera dominates every scene he is in. Soul is so compelling. The twins are boring and irritating. Chimera as Soul's former Padawan would be incredible. I'm actually gonna put this in the bordering on offensive. They give reasons. I can't say how true those reasons are. One, I don't think you're supposed to like May, and I will say that, I'm not using that as like a defense. People will be like, I don't like this. And somebody would be like, you're not supposed to like it. Okay. Or, it's supposed to make you feel this way. Okay, congrats, it did, and I don't like it. So, like, I'm not using that as a defense, but it also presents like you don't understand the characters. You're not supposed to like May, and then you're holding her to things that she did as a kid. First off, torturing little helpless animals, like all of this is a bit much of an exaggeration, right? Torturing helpless animals. Look, she held that butterfly in the forest, and OSHA was like, May, stop. You don't have to do that. I didn't see it that as like torturing the butterfly. It's just that OSHA was looking at it, and so she took interest in it, and she was like, "Hey, look, I can hold it too." Like I do not see that as like torturing helpless animals. She literally tried to force her sister to live a life she didn't want. Again, she's a kid. It's not like they're teenagers. She OSHA understands that she wants her own life. May understands that she wants to be connected with her sister and the ascension, like the power of one. She she doesn't fully understand why Osha's like not resistant. And Osha's the only other kid in this area, so it's like all she has is Osha. She ain't got no other friends. So she attached more to Osha than having a sense of self. And maybe to me that presents that Osha might be a couple minutes earlier, but I also don't think that's fair. And then she tells her sister she wants to murder her and starts a fire. And this is before meeting Chimera. She didn't do it on purpose. Now, yes, she was a little bratty when she ran up in there, took that thing, and was like, I'll kill you to keep you here. And then she burned it. And then it quickly catches fire, and she's like, she doesn't know what to do. And the electrical system shut down, and she's like genuinely terrified. Like, I don't know, man. You ain't never had a sibling. You don't sound like you a sibling. I'm a sibling. I'm a sibling of three brothers, so I don't know, man. We said a lot of things. I don't know. After meeting Chimera, she murders two Jedi. Basically murders a droid and leaves her sister for dead on a planet with a man eating bugs on it. First off, okay, so yeah, she assumed Osha's appearance, but she knew Chimera was there, and I ain't saying she would automatically know Chimera would like take care of her, but we are at odds, and I'm gonna complete this mission and come back and find you. I don't think that that's like leaving her there to be eaten by men. I'm sorry, men eating bugs. She shows absolutely zero remorse for murdering people. She has no loyalty, switches sides multiple times. She's just an incredibly unlikable character. You know who that really sound like? Several male characters in the Star Wars franchise. Now, Kylo Ren is likable to me. I unfortunately must say that I do see the appeal of Reylo. I see the appeal, but also I see the appeal of all of it. Finn, Rey, um, um, ah man, Poe and oh girl that they meet in the second movie and into the third movie and Kylo, all of them can have a party together. I see it all. But Kylo also switches sides several times too. I mean, like he doesn't like switch sides, but he has this back and forth too. Anakin has this back and forth too. I honestly see a lot of similarities between Anakin and Osha. I really do. So this notion that she's flat and boring, I see a lot of similarities in between the two. Both of them had trouble like conquering their anger. Anakin goes and murders an entire civilization after a couple hold his mom hostage and kill her. Children too. He says this to Padme. Like, was he a murderous monster without remorse? Yeah, sure, he had a little bit of remorse, but like he did that. Um, I feel indifferent about Osha, have zero emotional attachment to her. And then her character gets worse. She snoops on Chimera and watches him in the nude. Literally looks at his penis and doesn't even try to look away. We are talking about a guy who just murdered six people, including a childhood friend. He corrupted her sister and she letting herself be seduced by him. She's holding a saber to him. Like, he knew that she was back there. She grabbed that weapon. He said he coming out the water. He didn't stay in that water. And when she looks down, it's a nod to what he says. He's like, you're wondering if it's appropriate to kill me right now, and battle is justified, but after is out later, it's vengeance, right? And so she's like, he's bare. He's quite literally bare. So for her to kill him, she has to think about that. I did not see that as her perving on him or letting herself be seduced by him. The only reason, now he is trying his hardest. And don't get me wrong, I'm a shipper of it. He is trying his hardest. And she not really, when she aligns herself with him, it's to save her sister. It's to save her. She explicitly tells him, I'm not my sister. I'm not that easily corruptible or corrupted. Like, so. And then this notion that the twins are boring and irritating, and then the male leads, Chimera and Soul, and yes, they are men of color, they are Asian descent men, so that's, I won't hate on it because they were interesting. But him as his former Padawan would be incredible. But Chimera is also he's the Padawan of I forget her name, but he is a former Jedi and a former Padawan of Soul's higher up council member, right? So that in itself would be interesting. So I don't think we need to change anything. So overall, I'm gonna put this in a bordering on offensive. I do not feel like it's based in actual of the character. And that was just one. And that's 14 minutes in. We're 14 minutes in, and that's just one. Um, Tasselhoff says so far this show has been serving up an awful lot of critical uh reveals for the last couple of episodes. The risk of this choice is that the reveals are not very compelling or emotionally invoking. The whole series fell flat. I agree that the twins have been absolutely least interesting aspect of the show so far. I'm remaining open to open mind and to ch I'm remaining open to having my mind change in the next two episodes, but I hope it's not a case of too little too late. Chimera is intriguing and I'm curious about his backstory, but I'd rather it disgust me, but it rather disgusts me that Osha is playing into his manipulation so easy. And I am impatient to hear what Soul has to say. Please, no more forced delays. Venestra. So Chimera is Venestra's former Padawan, and that would have been interesting if we had gotten to season two. She's an enigma, and I hope we get more about what's going on behind that poker face of hers. Everyone else has been killed off too soon to really get into the character, but Jackie certainly caught my interest as having lots of potential, and I'm sorry she's among the slain. Episode 7, you got a lot right on you, so don't blow it. No pressure. Um, in that middle ground, you have a right to say that the twins, didn't catch your attention, but also, Amanda Steinberg played two characters with different they do have different personalities. Some of it is kind of still bordered on rage, but May's rage is rooted in a sense of pride in where she comes from, but it also needs like a backing. Osha's rage, she's trying to hide it. It's there, and she's trying to hide it. So these are two different characters, and I can clearly see the distinction. I don't understand how people don't. Um, we're gonna scroll down because we actually just like have a lot. Okay, Who's 30 says, personally, I find the twins widely entertaining, but that is because I understand the uncommon character mode the writers are using for them. They are very specifically drawn as women who experience a severe trauma in childhood. As a result, they spend most of their time avoiding what they truly want to be by either pleasing other people, Osha, or displaying aggressive masculine behavior, May. The character they most remind me of is Claire Sterling from The Silence of the Lamb, whose father was killed when she was 10, and then spent her former years experiencing various other traumas. Only when she met the right mentor, Hannibal Lecter, she was able to unlock her true self and use her full abilities to solve it. May and Osha have finally found their right mentors. We are going to see if the writers can pull off their transformation in a satisfying way. Critically positive, it acknowledges the what I would say, is the differences between OSHA and Chimera a little bit better than what I did just then. Um, Critically positive. Yeah, I'm actually gonna leave it at those since we're like 19 minutes in, and I'm gonna like kind of get into why I feel there is a resemblance in Anakin from OSHA. Like I said, they have the similarity in that they cannot really control their anger. Um, Anakin is a Jedi. He becomes a Jedi, but he's also a little bit arrogant for a Jedi, right? Osha is not as arrogant, but she still has this um attitude in her, this emotion in her that prevents her from being a Jedi. And I'm not making the greatest comparison, and I'm pulling up my notes right now, but I feel like they are similar. I'm not saying it's a one versus one ratio similarity, but there is a similarity. Also, another criticism of the show is that it portrayed the Jedi, who in the original, Darth Vader represents the Nazis, right? So the Jedi are the good forces and they're being represented as bad people. Well, one, no, the Jedi as a whole isn't being represented as bad people, but people in the Jedi can use this as, a way to have some type of superiority. And we see this in the sequel. Um, I had some videos, but I'm not gonna pull up my videos. But basically, we see this in the sequels with Luke and how he feels that the Jedi feel that they are all knowing, and because they feel that they are all knowing, that leads them to creating their own enemies. And he feels this way because he created the enemy of Kylo Ren from Ben Solo. Um, we also see this when Yoda has lines. He says, attachment leads to jealousy, the shadow of great deed that is, train yourself to let go of everything you feel to lose. You fear to lose. My question is, do they ever really, the Jedi teach people like how to like let go of anger? That's one of my issues with the Jedi, and it's something that like I don't know, like, oh, meditate, clear your mind, calm your mind. But are you really actually teaching me to let it go? Like, or just shove it down, push it to the side. Like, I do not think that the Jedi actually teaches you to deal with negative emotions. And because they don't teach you to deal with negative emotions, or at least not as well as they could, a lot of their Padawans fall to the dark side, and then they t treat the dark side like, this emotion is automatically gonna lead you to the dark side, and so you start feeling it, and it's like, am I slipping to the dark side? And you don't want to tell your master because, yeah, I just not to say that the Jedi as a whole are bad, but they are flawed. And you see that in the original series. Like, I don't think that this show is portraying the Jedi as bad people. Another critique was that, oh, fire in space. How do you get fire in space? Because, May burns down the compound. Um, Maybe the same way you get hyperspace travel in these shows. Again, with The Walking Dead, I feel like this is a case of we are honing too much on the reality for the sake of being a hater, because th that took you out, not anything else. In these series, this whole franchise, you can suspend your disbelief, but fire in space, mind you, they have several explosions on planets, and use fire on planets. So like I don't what are we talking about here? Looking at my notes, another thing that, I want to point out is that when Palpatine is trying to get Anakin to turn, um, Anakin is like, no, the Jedi are good. They do what is best. They are selfless. They care about others. Um, and then Palpatine is like, are they? They told you to spy on me. I thought they were good, but now they're using these tactics that they would condemn from other people in you. Um, they're gonna kill off all these people who conspire with me without letting them face trial. And, that was the right thing to do. But, they get to play judge, jury, and executioner when they want. We see this in the original series, in the George Lucas series. So these notions that they're presenting the Jedi as bad people and you should align yourself with the Sith, I don't know. I feel like that's a black and white view. Um, I feel like that's a black and white view, and I don't think it's fair. Overall, I don't think the show was bad. A little rushed, but I do think that if it had time to find its footing, it would have found its footing. I just do not believe that it had time to find its footing because, in addition to all the people who claimed that they watched it and only got one episode in, it was already review bombed well before it actually aired when the trailer dropped. Amanda Steinberg she posted a song to her Instagram in retaliation, not retaliation, in confrontation. That's not the word either. In response, that is the word. It is 6 in the morning, guys. In response to what she felt was racist comments coming after her. And then people took that and started using that against her and saying, oh, she's weird for this. We cannot like a show. But she was she felt that she was being targeted. And she'd been a fan, she says, since the originals. Um, and yet here she was not being able to take part in it. And as far as like black characters in Star Wars, Finn being a bit side character, sidelined for Rey and Kylo Ren. I don't want to say like it's automatically him being sidelined for Rey and Kylo Ren, but because I thought they were all going to be like all three protagonists, and then it quickly slides into Reylo and Kylo Ren, and he's off on his own. He still has agency, but he is a side character now. So I'll leave this with the question of in a galaxy far, far away where a group of rebel resistance fight an oppressive system, who was allowed to be in those rebel spaces? Who was allowed to be the hero in those rebel spaces? Or who are allowed to be I don't want to say villains, but the morally complicated people in these spaces. And I'll leave that there and we'll come back and talk a little bit more about that in my conclusion. But that is a little bit of the tension that the Acolyte got. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Let me leave your comments down below. Let me know what you thought of the show. Be respectful. We can have a conversation with one another, but only if we are respectful. With that, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, and stick around for the next episode where we finally get to the show that I've been holding off, Sleepy Hollow.